I'm happy to report that the Kansas legislature has finally reached adjournment for the 2017 session. You may have heard that the legislature finally came to a close after 113 days on June 10th. Now, as I mentioned in some of the earlier reports, of significance this session was that we needed to come up with a new school finance formula and obviously the funding that goes with that. I believe most of us felt that we needed to finally get to a balanced budget. We were able to achieve that, and also we had to come up with a tax bill, and subsequently that came about as well with veto-proof numbers. I might point out that although we did adjourn on June 10th, the legislature will actually come back into session on June 26th. Many of you know that day. It's referred to as sine die, and that's kind of when the books are closed for the year, and it's the last time that the legislature as a whole can take any action. Now, we did pass a budget bill with veto-proof numbers as well, as far as the votes in the House and the Senate. The governor can go through that and do some line item vetoes, and of course, if we come back and don't like what he's vetoed, we are able to try to override those as well. The budget is significantly more than what the governor had put in at the beginning of the session as kind of the starting point, or as I always refer to it, the working document that we go off of as we proceed through the session. Subsequently, we will be back on the 26th. Hopefully, things will stay in place and the governor will let a few things happen, such as letting the budget go through. Now, there was a tax bill that finally passed. If you recall, the governor vetoed the first one at the very early part of the session, which I think kind of set the tone to kind of bog things down. We did pass a tax bill towards the end of the session. Interestingly enough, after that was passed, Moody's, the credit agency, upped the bond rating for the state of Kansas after that happened. So things are looking good, and as we get some bills paid, obviously we'll see some increase in that. We had to, as I mentioned, pass a education funding bill and a new formula. We were able to achieve that in the legislature, and so Senate Bill 19, if you want to refer to that, does provide about $286 million in new money to our K-12 system. That would bring the per pupil amount from about $4,006 to $4,128. I did vote in opposition to that, obviously supporting education, but the fact of the matter is this will go to the Supreme Court for their review. There's a good sense out there that they may reject that, possibly approve of the 2018 funding, but ask the legislature to do further work on the 2019 budget. We also saw a significant budget passed towards the end of at the end of the session, the omnibus appropriations bill, and some significant things in that I think are going to be of good news is that we did restore some funding, approximately $3 million for the Senior Care Act. That's a combined $3 million for both fiscal year 18 and 19. We also provided bonding authority for the Kansas Department of Transportation so we can stay up with our highway program and make sure that we do our enhancement as well as our maintenance projects out there. CAPERS will be funded through 2019. That's good news there, so we don't get too far behind on that. Significant amount of money, although the fourth quarter payment in 2018 and 2019 is going to be delayed over a 20-year period. We also have restored some of the funding for the Regents institutions, and there's also $1.2 billion that's going to be in the funding for the State Water Fund, and that is a pretty significant thing. I said 1.2 billion, I believe it's 1.2 million, but that's required to have about $8 million in a year, and they have not done that over a number of years, so that's good news that at least some of that funding is being restored. We also saw a number of bills come through this session that have been already signed by the governor, and I think probably everybody's going to have final newsletters pointing all those things out. In the budget, there was also a 2.5% pay increase for state employees that have been in employ for 5 years or less. Those over would possibly get up to 5%. Now that comes on after seeing them not have a raise, some of them for 8 or 9 years. There's also, for the non-judicial staff, some pay increases in there as well. So it was, overall, I'm not going to put a grade on it, but it was a pretty interesting session, and also some pretty good things happened. And so this will probably be my final report. I thank all of you for your comments and your input that we've had through the session.